enabling sustainable energy and environmental justice with blockchain technology. That's definitely, we want to get into a lot of how blockchain and crypto is connected to energy. We've been experiencing a lot of different types of weather changes and everything, and Bitcoin gets blamed for everything. It's because of those Bitcoin miners that apparently we're having all flooding. We definitely want to talk about, is this myth true? Is it not true? And then, how is blockchain and crypto being able to thrive and help with business innovation and still remain sustainable to our environment? Go ahead, Adrian, give a brief introduction of yourself to let our viewers know who you are.
Yeah, just very quickly, I call myself a recovering senior executive from federal government, and I do mean recovering. And people have asked me, when is my recovery going to end? And I say, when I can shift the market by just sending a tweet, right? That's my big goal, right? When I can shift the marketplace, I can shift the stock price by just sending something out. That's what I'm about, right? And the question is, how do we do that, right? So my background is I was CIO for Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, for 6 years during the most terrific time in the agency, although COVID may be trumping that now, but dramatic hurricane season of 2017, Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. I led all of the IT and technology response and recovery operations for the agency at that time. Prior to that, I was with NASA Goddard as the NASA Goddard Cio, where I ran all mission operations networks for anything destined for space. So normally when you saw the little kids in the background with the president around them speaking to the International Space Station, that was really over my wires. And then I spent 3 years at National Weather Service as the National Weather Service CIO, where I managed and led all of the U.S. Rights and access to weather data, to include some of the supercomputing side and ensembles where we generated the national forecast and then pushed that down to local end to be refined by local forecasters. And then I began my career at Department of Energy, where I stayed there for 17 years. Led a lot of efforts around cybersecurity as well as environmental sustainment, and also started the environmental justice program with EPA way back when I first started talking to them with how do we engage state regulators and the like to look at cleanup standards around minority populations and folks that are at risk and underserved. So that's a quick intro, and toss into the other panels.
Hi, everyone. My name is Oliinka Odeniran. I am the founder of Black Women Blockchain Council, also known as BWBC. It's good to be here with everyone today. BWBC is a benefit organization that aims to educate as well as raise awareness about the blockchain technology. We also provide initiative to promote Black women in this space. We actually started in 2018 solely because back then when there was the Bitcoin conference back in Miami, there was a large amount of speakers who were male. And unfortunately, the after party ended up being at a strip club. And that caused a movement which spearheaded a lot of women being involved in this space. I started to look around and realize that there wasn't a lot of Black women in this space. And this time around, I didn't want us to be left out. So I created BWBC to do just that, to make sure that there's inclusiveness in this ecosystem that we're building. And we're also getting a part to participate in the revolution in the future that we're also building. One of the things that we've done so far is provide education. We are on Clubhouse. We have a room called What the Hell is Blockchain? It's very important for people to be introduced to the technology and not just a lot of the use cases. I think once people are attached to the technology and understand that a lot more can be built on this technology, we as people can be more creators. Another recent initiative that we've started is to increase the number of Black women blockchain developers in this space to 500,000 by the year 2030. As you guys are probably aware, there's a huge demand for blockchain developers, but there's a small supply. This is a way for us to be solution oriented and be involved in creating the future. So we're very proud of that. It's not just for Black women, it's also for Black men, and it's for the entire diaspora. We want to make sure that as a global community that we're all involved and we're all participating. There is 2 tracks to that program. One of the track is, of course, the developer track, and the other side is solution architect. So if you're an individual that's in your industry and you've heard the buzz that your corporation is interested in blockchain, you can sit at the table once you go through this track and be able to dictate and provide information on how to spearhead implementing this technology into the infrastructure. So we're very proud of that. We're excited, and we're very excited to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Mason. I'm a surviving student, parent, and educator of the New York City Department of Miseducation. I teach web design, animation, digital photography, and AP computer science principles to high school students. I've developed a curriculum over the past 20 years that has earned my school the Brooklyn Studio School no less than $1 million in state funding. We have experimented with augmented reality via the HoloLens, and we're about to embark on NFT development in my digital photography class. I worked on making my department and my curriculum state certified, resulting in our students being accepted into top computer science and art schools in the country. I take all of these skills and experiences and funnel it into as a UX designer and solutions architect, into my business Light Guide, and where we offer UX solutions for digital projects. And currently I'm working with musicians and artists, and we're creating an NFT experience. So I'm working with international DJs and producers, and we're in our research and development phase of development. Glad to be here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Todd Shern from the Howard University Systems and Computer Science Department. And my role here is multifaceted, but it really is to bring awareness to the value that Howard and HBCUs could potentially play in many of the initiatives that have been discussed thus far. One of the initiatives that we are engaged in at Howard is with Melanin Solar, which is seeking to link solar generated power with a new token that is BTC linked. And so we're working with governments and the World Bank, and there's a need for power. World Bank has an initiative by 2030 have most of the world's population be accessible to power. So we're trying to work to satisfy that, and using blockchain in two areas. First, obviously in the investment space, but then secondly, as this negotiation or this trinket for peer-to-peer energy trading. That's it. Thank you.
I'm Charles Anchang from Odua Blockchain Solutions, and I am so humbled and honored to be here with you. I am originally from Cameroon, Africa, and I've been with Odua Blockchain Solutions since the genesis of it, since 2017. And we are the first Pan-African cryptocurrency with its own native blockchain. And we've been adopted by the African Diaspora Development Institute as the Pan-African cryptocurrency of choice. We are the #1 sponsor for the Wakanda One City of Return that will be taking place in Ghana coming up December 2nd at the Cape Coast of Ghana. So we are a cryptocurrency with a message about bringing the people together and empowering them using blockchain technology. We are a cryptocurrency for all of us, our people on the continent, our people out of the continent who have been disenfranchised and have not had technology that could bring them together, create value for them, and assist them build wealth on blockchain. That's my introduction. Thank you.
We have a fairly large panel. Who wants to tackle the criticism that is often in the mainstream news? Proof of work blockchains, and specifically Bitcoin, are contributing to our global warming situation and not beneficial. And that's the reason why they should not be utilized.
You remember when computers started back in the 80s, a computer was massive because of the technology that we had available back then. Now, today, you can have a computer on your cell phone. Same goes with proof of work and proof of stake. Now, when they started this blockchain platform, the block spacing to generate an algorithm that could create a new coin, they had to use proof of work because that was the technology they understood and they could use, which is very viable still. But as we evolved and we studied technology, we witnessed that proof of stake would deliver the same result in less time. And so proof of stake is a lot more eco-friendly because you wouldn't have, and it's low cost, you wouldn't have to generate as much electricity or consume as much electricity to generate the same result. So proof of stake is just an upgrade of the proof of work model, and it's more eco-friendly, and it's also better because of the inclusivity it offers. People who, especially for us like Odua, we're thinking about people of African descent, people in Africa that might not have access to electricity, to power. And we thought if we were going to create blockchain that would be adaptable to environments that were in remote communities, people that are in remote communities all over the planet, we have to make it accessible so that for the users, so that they could stake, they could mine the coin, and also participate in staking. So proof of stake is a low-cost, more efficient method of mining, but it doesn't take away the value of proof of work. Bitcoin still stands its ground as a proof of work method. It would hold its value because that's the protocol it was created on. But we came on the Bitcoin protocol and we created something a little better because we had to adapt to technology. So the criticism is just, it's a debate, but that is just the way it is. When you create a technology, you could evolve. But the hard thing with Bitcoin is you just can't change the proof of work overnight. No, that's the model that was created at the beginning.
Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency, and in order for it to dispense its coins, it said, hey world, if you want to lend some of your computer processing power, so basically like run software in the back of your computer, on an old computer or new computer, we'll have a system set up that randomly you'll be get paid for your sharing your computer processing power for any jobs that it does. Now, because Bitcoin was first, people quickly realized that the more powerful your computer was, the more likely you were going to earn fragments of denominations of Bitcoin. So people just started using higher and higher end computers, and also having rack space at different places, using a tremendous amount of electricity in order to acquire this coin. And then you had conversations happening that maybe there's a better way that people can buy their way into a blockchain called proof of stake. Like you exchange your fiat for a certain amount, and because you're holding a certain amount, you have a certain amount of voting power in exchange. But it's very controversial. So, but the proof of stake system, there are ways in which people can earn more cryptocurrency by locking it away. Think of it like an IRA or 401k type model implied into the blockchain network. And so a way of dispensing funds that everyone either gets some free because the producer of the coin is giving it away, called an airdrop, or you can buy your way into a chunk. And it's as controversial as saying all these different positions, proof of work versus proof of stake, is as controversial as saying the Cowboys are the best football team that ever lived. Some people believe that, some people don't. The New York Yankees are the best baseball team that ever existed. Some people believe that, some people don't. The Williams sisters are the best tennis players. So we're getting into at least these two models, and there's a hybrid in between. There are people that are doing proof of work that are more green energy, low processing power computers, and they're having it so that you can build a protocol on top that has staking, so independent things. Think of these things as like, the blockchains are a continent, but you can put little nations on them, so other protocols. And then within those little nations, you can have little cities. So it's the same thing, just repurposed in the blockchain world, because everybody wants to customize and meet their community's financial needs. So does anybody have anything to add to that? Go ahead, Adrian.
I mean, this is, so I struggle with even that, this conversation, because if you look at the percentage of what blockchain represents from the standpoint of technology, data centers worldwide, why are we even talking about it, right? This is misinformation. I mean, it's a political argument to actually prevent people from entering into the blockchain sort of industry, investigating it, because they realize it's going to be disruptive to many of these markets that we have. So I even struggle with even having the conversation. That's why you saw me smile when you asked it, even though I know it's out there. And one of the things is I run after my life in government, I've started a nonprofit called the Smart Tech Nexus Foundation, which empowers faith-based organizations for social service delivery at the distant end using technology, blockchain, geospatial, a whole bit of it. It's meant to the have-nots from joining this movement, and because they recognize it's going to level the playing field. And that's what I try to tell the ministers. I'm like saying, look, folks, we had a group that came to us like, what about this blockchain thing? We heard that it's I was like, okay, number one, think about the amount of technology you use in your daily life. And you're trying to tell me that this little tool that again, you can use on your phone. You can have your own rack at home. You can have, your specific set of equipment that you can buy. But think about the number of data centers that are around the world, like a Dell or Amazon Web Services, and think about the amount of energy they are consuming. And why should we be focused on blockchain as this little entrant into the sort of the technology space? So we have to really, I want us to step back, and we also shouldn't react to nonsense, right? We can't make sense of nonsense. So I usually I like put it to the side and I move forward, right? Because I can't waste that much time on it because I have so many other things to do. That would be my comment.
I 100% agree with Adrian. I'm shaking my head vigorously right now because he's saying nothing but the truth. He mentioned Amazon and stuff, but we also have the financial institutions. These individuals, they're using a lot of computational power as well, but no one is going to them and giving them that pushback, right? Because it's beneficial, right? So it's just another talking point, deter people from going towards decentralization, right? And it's effective because a lot of people are latching onto it. I mean, there's a huge ESG, environmental social governance movement, right? And a lot of the younger kids are really tuned in and focused on that too. Because I recall seeing like a young artist, they were twin sisters and they were young artists. And I told one of them that they should get into NFTs. They will make a lot of money. This is an opportunity for them. One of the pushback was NFTs, she's not really sure because of the environmental issue. And I'm like, wow, I'm like, well, I mean, I tried to give her a reasonable response to that. But at the same time, how can you push against that when the narrative has already clouded a lot of people's judgment? So I 100% agree with Adrian.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And just the quote, Malcolm X, the power of the media and their ability to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent, they control the minds of the masses. So, just to keep that in the historical perspective, we can't trust everything that comes out of the media. And we also have to teach like media literacy to the kids because we're getting it on all sides. And what's for the best interest of this country is sometimes thwarted by the media, which is being paid off by corporations, and this country's being left behind. Worldwide, everyone's on this, and now we're behind because, I guess banks and other corporations want to kind of hoard and control,
And Karen, to your point, our Black and brown people are the farthest behind.
Yes.
I mean, even if you just take COVID-19 and the vaccine I don't know where you are, anti-vax, vax, but the whole bunch of misinformation, it just tells you the power that media has on our young people's minds today, right? And we really have to be, like you said, wise consumers of information. And we're not teaching critical thinking enough in our HBCUs. And Todd, I'll get to you too on some of the HBCU stuff I'm doing as well. But I mean, we have to really begin to teach that as a skill set. You don't necessarily have to agree, but you at least have to be able to discern in a reasonable way. And right now, the sources that come out, they automatically trust, right? And so you have to, and we know that there is disinformation out there, misinformation being populated throughout our networks, throughout our Facebook page, throughout all of our Twitter accounts. All of that stuff is happening, right? And so we have to really begin to educate our young folks as quickly and as soon as possible and make them wise consumers of information. And that's very difficult in this stance right now. So it really starts at home. And many people don't have that presence at home to even have that conversation, right? So we got to figure a way.
Right. And I know for me, in my computer science class, like teaching coding, in all aspects, it's like I always tell my students that it increases your problem solving muscle, and you become much more critical thinker. And a lot of times, because the whole curriculum around the country has minimized critical thinking, so now we elect who we elect and we accept information without questioning it because we don't even have, just like you said, Adrian, we don't have the skill set.
I also want to speak to the fact that this discussion that we're having right now about the environmental issues with Bitcoin really started from Elon Musk, right? An influencer who decided to use that as a way for him to move into Dogecoin and out of Bitcoin. Prior to that, nothing has changed since the time he purchased Bitcoin to the time he said all of a sudden, the environmental issue is a big factor for him to transition out. nothing has really changed. There was always that component there, but all of a sudden it didn't serve his best interest, right? And now he's pushing Dogecoin, right? So it all goes back into that critical thinking. Like, how does it benefit this person? Because he's now doing this to move money from one area to the other, and it definitely benefits him.
The irony of that is SpaceX. The fact that many of the people who kind of question, because we're not going with their particular crypto properties, many of the people who question whether or not Bitcoin is green, or any other blockchains coming along, why do we need more proof of work blockchains are green? They also shoot rockets into space and trying to get people to emit, which is like probably the most ungreen thing they can do. I wanted to go back to Todd because I know Professor Shern has actually co-authored a green paper for why. What type of response, if you've ever had conversations with people about why or Bitcoin in general, how do you counter this notion that there is a marketing campaign that has happened that has been a pushback to say, well, it's not really green, it's not for the environment? How do you actually counter that coming from an engineering perspective?
So I really can't say from an engineering perspective because I'm a consultant with Melanin Solar. So I'm actually pushing it forward, right? I'm pushing why from the point of view of its value for peer-to-peer energy trading. And so I will acknowledge potentially, damaging or extensive energy use in the mining of Bitcoin. But from, the perspective of our business, we're pushing, the token as, peer-to-peer trading currency. So, what can I say? Businessman on this one.
All right, so you're the businessman, but essentially, I think that one of the things that WIVE did was the fact that they give the greatest weight to low processing power miners of Raspberry Pis and Odroid, and it's ASIC resistant, that you can't actually use those high-end gaming machines to any greater benefit. And then the fact that they're tethering it to solar energy credit means that they're merging the current solar energy into a fungible with Bitcoin cryptocurrency, that wherever these solar panels are throughout the tropical regions, Africa and the Caribbean, are actually more beneficial than me in New Jersey. But where they are, that they're collecting these credits that they can bring to the marketplace, they have some fungibility out to Bitcoin. And if it has a correlation to Bitcoin, it definitely can have if the person prefers, a U.S. stable coin or something like that. There's just fungibility with something that they can pragmatically use in their respective countries in terms of, because if Bitcoin is not readily spendable, they can just get it in USD, Euro, Yen, the denomination of their nation, and actually elements of their country that have to partake of cryptocurrency. Because if you're a rural person and you're living in an ethnicity in which the primary ethnicity within your own community is really cattle, that doesn't translate well when you want to spend a school fee because your child or your offspring are now in more urban centers. You can't necessarily readily sell a cow that quickly. You need some type of interaction with the currency based communities. So it gives rural people, miners, farmers, and others this entry into that central banking thus far has pretty much failed to provide, the unbanked, whether we're talking about Harlem or we're talking about parts of Kenya or Cameroon. Charles, you wanted to add something.
Talking about financial inclusion on blockchain is a very important aspect, especially when we're looking at blockchain communities. When we talk about, we are very privileged in America. We have power. When you wake up, you have electricity, you have hot water, you have cold water. Now, if you go to a country like Nigeria, which is one of the wealthiest countries in Africa in terms of crude oil, they're still heavily challenged with power supply, which is a big problem. So when you're talking about technology that's adaptable to a community, you must be able to be creative in creating technology that could bring these people back into the market. If you're looking at indigenous communities in Africa, people out in Australia and all over the planet, you must create technology that's adaptable to their environment as well. So proof of stake, as we're talking about, is actually very good for that kind of an environment. Why? Because some people might not have access to a computer, and they want to still participate in the staking pool. So they could also get included as participants in the gains of that particular platform without necessarily missing out of the opportunity because they are in an environment that is not well developed and they don't have consistent power supply. So those are things we should always consider putting behind our heads as we talk about the evolution of blockchain, financial inclusion. Key thing is technology. How is technology in Africa going to assist people in Africa? Look at, is it 5G? How are we working on the continent? How are we working in the remote areas? Now we're having a lot of people from Polynesia that are coming together on the platform. How do we make our platform user-friendly for them? Those are key things. So
but when it comes to Cameroon and even other nations, how do you, in a proof of stake model, how do you prevent latecomers with abundant wealth from usurping all the smaller people who have entered the proof of stake maybe earlier, but just have limited funds? I think that's one of the major criticisms of proof of stake is that you could get an Elon Musk or you can get a Charles Hoskinson to come in and they're lush with cash. And next thing you know, Cameroonians are, even in their own blockchain, are basically the minority stakeholders in that blockchain. So how is your coin actually preventing someone of greater means from coming in and saying, well, thanks for aggregating all these little small people. Now I'm going to buy up a chunk and now I'm going to make decisions for it. So you have this window for colonization, French, British, American, Chinese, Russian, everybody except for African Americans, which we don't want to be the colonists anyway, but you have this opportunity, you put this window for a bunch of people to come over and say, yeah, thanks for getting things started. Now we run the show because we just bought this huge stake.
Great. Okay. In our strategy, in our token strategy, we have been very, very conservative in making sure that we control to a great extent how we decentralize the distribution of the coins. So now we have just about 5 million coins that we still held. We held in the vault. And we have a method in terms of how we complete the project. We have a method which we use. We won't allow one person to get a majority of the coins because we're trying to get a 51%, a decentralized blockchain, whereas no one person would have that kind of, you can check us on Blockchain Explorer, no one person can have majority at all time that would make them so influential on the blockchain network. So far, we've been doing well with that strategy, and we're still working very conservative and we're very, very, very conservative in our strategy. As we complete the project by the end of the year in terms of mass adaptation, if you look at our internet at oduaexplorer.com, you would see the distribution of our coins, and you see that there is no one person. Now, with that limited supply, small amount we have, we still are trying to the best of our capacity to make sure we limit so that way the distribution should be much more decentralized. That's how we do it.
But if you lock the coins, aren't you that one person? Go ahead, Todd.
No,
okay. So right. So I say in the case of Rive, and the way you kind of took the question, it was kind of a softball, but you hit it, and now I'm going to take the softball and throw it again, which is that the work that you described is actually what we did at Howard. We worked on the algorithm for what would be a proof of stake. And so what happened is that we processor locked, right? So if you came in with a big ASIC, you pretty much had no chance. I mean, you had to have a Raspberry Pi, and we just had this progression scheme of what the processor could be. And then with the low power processor, that gave you the greatest chance, in addition to the IP from where you were mining from. In addition to, we looked at ways of timestamping everything. So, all right, if this person is doing it, we really tried a lot where the person was mining from. And we penalized folks in China. Fortunately, we penalized African Americans because we didn't know how to separate African Americans out. If you're in North America, how do we know whether you're Black or not? We don't. So we just kind of gave only a 10% chance. So to your point specifically is that we addressed it algorithmically as best we could. Additionally, to your point, if someone comes in with a lot of cash with a low power mining operation that they want to run in Kenya, then they can play us as well.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Todd, how do you account for VPN?
So that's a good question. And we actually don't. The way we do look at it is, unfortunately, if we're not able to make a decision of where you are, we kind of put you in this category of low percentage of being able to get a coin, because it's all percentage based. So it's like an algorithm, and then then we put a percent on top of that. And so it doesn't really matter if you solve the problem, because your percent could be so low. So if we're not able to pinpoint where you are, then we assume you aren't and put you in that pool.
All right, we're pretty much out of time for this panel. The panel went really very quickly, and we're not going to solve the proof of stake versus proof of work debate. But as long as mindsets are moving forward to doing things conservatively, definitely whether you're in Cameroon or whether, I think WIVE is based fundamentally on the African continent, but specifically in Kenya, there has to be thought to empowering the respective nations of Africa, or empowering the respective nations, the people, and combating not only poverty, but building the middle class, to be able to bring industry to the respective countries, because that means something to us as African Americans. We can form these type of links across the board. So definitely want to thank, it was way too short. Want to thank our panelists for this presentation. We'll give a brief discussion on sustainability in terms of blockchain, with hopefully to rest the myth that even proof of work Bitcoin, the way it originally was, is infinitesimal compared to what the energy uses of central banking, and certainly, of course, to the space commercialization of the space program. In terms of, and then as things move forward, this idea of using renewable energy sources of solar, wind, damming, it's definitely going to affect all the computing industries as we move forward. So again, Todd, Karen, Olienka, Adrian, and Charles, thank you for this panel presentation.